You hear the names, Scott, good to see you. You hear the names and you see former presidents, Donald Trump, Bill Clinton. You have celebrities like Michael Jackson's name being dropped in here
Right.
and many others. Is it really anything new? We hear these names, but is it anything that we didn't know before?
I don't think so, because of the prior media interviews, because of the denials by these very high-level, high-society individuals, powerful politicians. I don't think in this first batch of some 900 documents there's anything new. What'll be interesting is what comes out as the other documents come out. There's still some litigation going on protecting those names.
One of the things that we are going to hear, and this is just the way that we are in society, these these modern times, you're going to hear a lot of chatter. You're going to hear a lot of association and saying, well, if this person was named, they must have had something to do with something else that was involved, some nefarious activity that was there. From a legal perspective, would that have already been covered if these are documents that are years old that are already coming from a prosecutor?
Yes, and the prosecution and the investigation of Jeffrey Epstein and his co-partner who's in jail now serving 20 years, all of that would have been investigated. Remember, over time, you lose the power of prosecution because evidence becomes stale. People die. Several people have passed away already. And so it'll be tough. Even if you're connected to Jeffrey Epstein, that in and of itself doesn't mean you participated in sex trafficking or human trafficking or sleeping with underage women. We have to be very careful. These are very powerful people. They've denied it. They've lawyered up. But if there was more there, if there was more there, you'd probably see it by now.
Can you just clarify for us, from the legal perspective, what we're talking about here? Because like you mentioned, you do have cases where a list will be provided, and maybe this is a list of people that had significant activity that could be considered criminal. In this particular case, these names that have been dropped, these names have been released, is it from witness testimony? Like, how did they become associated with Epstein?
Well, it's with witness testimony. Remember, there was a civil case and there was a criminal prosecution. And so these names came from witnesses. But it was really public information that Jeffrey Epstein had friends. I mean, the fact that you partied with Jeffrey Epstein 20 years ago or even more recently before he passed away, in and of itself doesn't mean that you were part of his criminal history. And we got to be careful with that. And that's why this is salacious and interesting and what have you. But it's not dispositive of any criminal prosecution or criminal conduct on the part of Bill Clinton and others. I mean, it just isn't. But the innuendo, right? You don't have a smoking gun document. You don't have a witness saying all of these individuals slept with underage girls. But the idea, the concept, the possibility is what is tantalizing the public.
Well, and that's what people were talking about, absolutely. But you don't have the dots to connect that.
Right.
And ideally, if you did have the dots, then they would have been charged years ago when these
presumably they certainly would have
were made. That being said, do you see from this release, we don't know what's going to be in the next round of documents, but from what we've seen so far, do you think any new charges will come in any cases?
Depends on what's in the documents, but you got to presume the feds have seen these documents already. And remember, the civil case, those documents certainly are public or in the hands of others. And so it's hard to say. But again, remember, you have your statute of limitations also, which is usually 5 years, could be more depending on the jurisdiction. So it's hard to see further prosecution in this case. But again, some states and some federal statutes don't have a time limit on human trafficking or sexual assault and what have you. And so I'm sure the feds as well as state prosecutors have looked at this.
All right. Well, we're going to keep talking about it, and we're going to keep looking into it as well, and I know you are as well.
Stay away from the innuendo.
Well, it's a challenge in itself, because that will
salacious details.
No doubt about it. Thank you, A. Scott Bolden, for joining us, as always, to help us break it down from a legal perspective.